At sunrise, the Mississippi River glows with mist rising above its waters, and from the distance strange green formations emerge from the flat landscape. These are not ordinary hills, but towering monuments of earth built by ancient hands. Known today as the Mississippi Mounds, they stand as North America's forgotten pyramids, silent, massive, and enduring, holding secrets of civilizations that thrived long before European contact. Among the fields and forests of the Mississippi Valley, thousands of these mounds once dotted the landscape. Some were small, shaped like conical burial sites. Others stretched out in intricate patterns, and a few rose to monumental heights, rivaling the great pyramids of other civilizations. Their existence poses questions that still puzzle historians. Who built them? How were they constructed without metal tools or beasts of burden? And what purpose did they serve in the spiritual and political life of the people who once called this land home? The greatest of these mound centers was Cahokia, located near modern-day St. Louis, Illinois. Over 1,000 years ago, it was the beating heart of a vast society, home to tens of thousands of people. Cahokia's centerpiece was Monk's Mound, the largest earthen pyramid in North America, covering more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. From its summit, rulers and priests oversaw a city alive with trade, ceremony, and ritual. Archaeological studies reveal that Cahokia was more than a city. It was the hub of an enormous trade network that stretched across the continent. Exotic shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, and mica from the Appalachian region all found their way here. These materials were transformed into ornaments, effigies, and ceremonial objects, proof of a culture connected far beyond its borders. The Mississippi River itself was their highway, carrying goods, ideas, and people. Yet trade was not the only force that bound the city together. Cahokia was deeply spiritual, and its mounds were sacred. Some served as platforms for temples, where smoke rose into the sky as offerings to the gods. Others functioned as burial sites for elites, interred with precious goods to accompany them into the afterlife. Archaeologists have uncovered elaborate grave goods, copper masks, effigy pipes, finely carved shell ornaments, evidence of social hierarchy and deep spiritual beliefs. Astronomy also played a role in their world. At Cahokia, archaeologists discovered a circle of wooden posts, now called Woodhenge. These posts aligned with the rising and setting sun during solstices and equinoxes. This was no coincidence. It was an ancient calendar, allowing priests to track the seasons, time ceremonies, and guide agricultural cycles. Like Stonehenge in England or the pyramids of Mesoamerica, Cahokia's builders fused architecture with the cosmos, binding heaven and earth in perfect alignment. Cahokia was not alone. Further south, in what is now Louisiana, lay Poverty Point, a site even older, dating back 500 years. Its massive earthworks stretched in concentric ridges across the land, forming one of the largest ceremonial landscapes in prehistoric North America. Poverty Point thrived as a trading hub and ceremonial center, attracting people from hundreds of miles away. Here, too, artifacts like the carved stone owl effigy hint at a symbolic world filled with ritual and meaning. To the east, Emerald Mound in Mississippi rose like a giant plateau, built by piling earth layer upon layer over centuries. Like Monk's Mound, it supported temples and ceremonial structures at its summit. Across the Mississippi Valley, hundreds of such sites once flourished, forming a cultural landscape of cities, temples, and sacred spaces. The lives of those who built the mounds were not simple. They organized labor on a massive scale, mobilizing thousands to haul basket after basket of earth. They maintained agricultural systems to feed growing populations. They crafted tools, pottery, and ornaments, balancing the demands of daily life with the obligations of ritual and ceremony. Their cities were places of innovation and complexity, belying the old myth that pre-Columbian North America was a land of scattered tribes. Instead, the Mississippi Mounds reveal societies that were advanced, organized, and deeply connected. Yet the mounds are also shrouded in mystery. Why did so many of these societies vanish? What happened to the people who built Cahokia, Poverty Point, and the countless smaller mound centers? Climate change, warfare, disease, and social upheaval may all have played a role, but the true story remains elusive, buried beneath centuries of soil and silence. As the sun sets over the Mississippi today, the mounds remain covered in grass, silent against the horizon. They are monuments not just of earth, but of memory, of a time when North America's great river valleys were alive with cities, trade, and cosmic alignments. Their presence raises a haunting question. How much of our history still lies hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Cahokia's story is one of both brilliance and enigma. At its height, around the year 1100 CE, the city was larger than London at the same time. Archaeologists estimate that between 20 and 40,000 people lived within its boundaries, making it the largest urban center north of Mexico. Rows of houses stretched across the floodplain, while broad plazas connected the towering mounds. Farmers worked the surrounding fields of maize, beans, and squash, sustaining a society that had grown to a scale few thought possible in pre-Columbian North America. At the heart of this great city stood Monk's Mound. Rising 100 feet high and covering more than 14 acres at its base, it was not just a feat of engineering, but also a symbol of power. From its summit, leaders performed rituals, gave speeches, and directed the life of the city below. The construction of Monk's Mound alone would have required the movement of millions of baskets of earth, each carried by hand. It stands as a testament to communal organization, shared belief, and human determination. The people of Cahokia built more than just mounds. They constructed wooden palisades around central areas, suggesting not only ceremonial importance but also the possibility of conflict and defense. Within those walls, plazas served as gathering places for markets, dances, games, and religious ceremonies. The game of chunky, played with spears and rolling stone discs, was one of the most popular pastimes. But for the Cahokians, games were never merely games. They carried spiritual and symbolic meaning, reflecting cycles of life and death, victory and loss, order and chaos. Religion was woven into every part of Cahokia's existence. The Mississippian worldview saw the universe as layered into three realms: the upper world of sky and spirit beings, the middle world of humans and animals, and the lower world of water and chaos. Mounds served as sacred bridges between these realms, elevating temples closer to the sky while grounding them in the earth below. Ritual fires, offerings, and dances would have been visible for miles, uniting the people in shared spiritual purpose. The Woodhenge Circle near Cahokia deepens the sense of cosmic connection. Posts were carefully positioned to align with the solstices and equinoxes, creating a living calendar. On certain mornings, crowds would gather to watch the sun rise directly between specific posts, marking the passage of time and signaling the start of seasonal ceremonies. This celestial alignment mirrored practices found across the world in ancient cultures, suggesting a universal human drive to connect earth and sky through monumental architecture. But Cahokia's story was not one of uninterrupted peace. Archaeological evidence reveals layers of burned buildings, mass burials, and signs of violent upheaval. Some mounds contain the remains of people who may have been sacrificed, young women interred with rich ornaments, of participants. The people of Poverty Point lived in a world without pottery, yet their artistry shines through small carved objects like the famous owl effigy. Possibly servants or captives buried to accompany elite leaders in death. Such practices highlight the stark inequalities of Cahokia, where power and privilege were concentrated in the hands of rulers and priests. While Cahokia dominated the central Mississippi Valley, other mound centers thrived across the region. To the south, the site of Moundville, in present-day Alabama, grew into a powerful ceremonial hub. Its plaza was ringed by over 24 mounds, each serving religious and political functions. Moundville became a place of pilgrimage, where rituals reinforced social order and connected scattered communities into a shared cultural identity. Even older than Cahokia was Poverty Point, located in northeastern Louisiana. Dating to around 1500 BCE, it astonishes archaeologists with its vast scale. Instead of tall pyramids, its builders created concentric ridges stretching nearly 3/4 of a mile in diameter, forming a monumental earthwork landscape. At its peak, Poverty Point was the center of an immense trade network, pulling in materials from as far away as the Appalachian Mountains and the Great Lakes. Exotic stones were transformed into effigies, beads, and ceremonial objects, while large cooking earthworks reveal feasts that may have drawn thousands of participants. The people of Poverty Point lived in a world without pottery, yet their artistry shines through small carved objects like the famous owl effigy. These enigmatic figures suggest a symbolic system of beliefs, though their precise meanings remain hidden. Unlike Cahokia, Poverty Point eventually faded, leaving behind a mystery. Why would such a thriving hub suddenly decline? Shifting rivers, resource shortages, or social turmoil may have played a role, but no single explanation has been proven. To the west, in present-day Arkansas, the Toltec Mounds rose from the delta landscape. Surrounded by swamps and rivers, they formed a ceremonial center that once guided the lives of nearby communities. Farther east, in Ohio, elaborate effigy mounds, shaped like serpents, birds, and bears spread across the landscape. The Great Serpent Mound, a sinuous earthwork stretching more than 1,000 feet, embodies both artistry and cosmology, aligning with lunar and solar events. Though not directly linked to Cahokia, these sites reveal a continent-wide tradition of mound-building cultures, each adapting their monuments to local environments and beliefs. The mounds were more than architecture, they were instruments of memory. By raising temples, burials, and symbols high above the land, communities ensured that their stories, rituals, and power structures would endure beyond generations. Just as the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia anchored civilizations in stone, the earthen mounds of North America anchored entire cultures in soil and spirit. The collapse of Cahokia remains one of the greatest mysteries in American prehistory. By the 1300s, its plazas were abandoned, its wooden posts left to rot, and its population dispersed. Climatic shifts, including the onset of the Little Ice Age, may have undermined agriculture. Overpopulation and resource depletion could have created social strain. Internal conflict or warfare with neighboring groups may have weakened its foundations. Unlike European cities that fell to invading armies, Cahokia seems to have eroded from within, leaving behind only silence and earthworks. Yet the legacy of the mound builders did not vanish entirely. Descendant communities, including the Osage, Quapaw, and Natchez peoples, carried forward elements of Mississippian culture. Their oral traditions speak of sacred landscapes, ancestral towns, and spiritual connections to the earth. To them, the mounds were not abandoned ruins, but living places tied to memory and identity. Today, these sites challenge us to rethink North America's ancient past. The image of scattered, nomadic tribes fades when confronted with the scale of Cahokia or Poverty Point. Instead, we see urban planners, astronomers, engineers, and artists, people who shape their world with vision and determination. The Mississippi Mounds reveal that before the arrival of Europeans, the continent was already home to civilizations that rose and fell, leaving behind stories written in earth. The Mississippi River flows on, carrying echoes of that forgotten world. The mounds remain as silent guardians, reminders that history is never as simple as we imagine. Their sheer presence asks a question that resonates today. How many other civilizations, their knowledge and power, lie hidden beneath the soil of the earth, waiting to be rediscovered? The deeper archaeologists dig into the Mississippi Mounds, the more puzzles they uncover. Beneath layers of earth, they have found objects that defy easy explanation. Elaborately carved effigy pipes, copper masks hammered into human-like faces, finely etched shell ornaments showing falcons and warriors. These artifacts suggest a symbolic language, a mythic world filled with gods, spirits, and ancestral forces. Yet the meaning of many of these images remains hidden, their stories buried alongside the people who created them. One recurring symbol among the mound-building cultures is the birdman, often depicted with outstretched wings and powerful talons. Scholars believe this figure may represent a warrior spirit connected to the upper world, a being who mediated between humans and divine forces. Other artifacts show serpents, panthers, and horned creatures beings tied to the watery chaos of the lower world. Together, they form a complex, spiritual system that blended natural forces, celestial events, and human ritual into one seamless worldview. The arrangement of mounds across entire landscapes adds another layer of mystery. At Cahokia, the positioning of mounds appears to align with both solar and lunar events, marking cycles of time and perhaps serving as a vast ceremonial calendar. At the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, the serpent's undulating body aligns with the summer solstice, sunset, and lunar standstills, suggesting knowledge of astronomy that rivaled civilizations across the world. Such alignments reveal that mound builders were not only farmers and artisans, but also skywatchers who wove cosmic order into the land itself. Trade continued to bind these communities together, spreading both material goods and ideas. Copper from the Great Lakes was transformed into ceremonial breastplates. Obsidian from the Rockies was shaped into razor-sharp blades. Seashells from the Gulf Coast became necklaces and ornaments, their pearly surfaces reflecting light during rituals. This wide exchange network suggests that mound centers like Cahokia were not isolated but interconnected hubs in a continent-spanning system. But along with the wealth of trade came the responsibilities of power. Archaeological evidence shows a society marked by hierarchy. Leaders lived atop platform mounds in houses built of wood and thatch, while common people occupied smaller homes in the floodplains. Burial sites reveal elites surrounded by valuable offerings, while others were interred with little or nothing. This social stratification gave Cahokia stability for centuries, but may also have planted the seeds of its eventual decline. As populations grew, resources were strained. The forests around Cahokia were cut down for building and fuel, leaving the landscape vulnerable to erosion. Hunting grounds became overworked, and the reliance on maize created both abundance and fragility. When droughts struck during the 1200s, crops failed, and hunger may have spread through the city. Archaeological layers from this period show signs of malnutrition, disease, and declining population, a silent testimony to the stresses of urban life in a fragile environment. Amid this decline, social unrest seems to have erupted. Some mounds show signs of violent destruction. Burned houses and palisades suggest conflict, whether from external enemies or internal rebellion. Human sacrifice, once rare and reserved for major rituals, appears to have increased, perhaps as leaders sought to reassert authority through fear and blood. Instead of uniting the community, these acts may have further divided it, weakening the very foundations of Cahokia society. While Cahokia faltered, other mound centers adapted and endured. Moundville in Alabama grew in prominence during this period, becoming a major ceremonial hub in the southeast. Unlike Cahokia, which collapsed almost completely, Moundville persisted into the contact era with Europeans, its cultural traditions carried forward by descendant groups. The Natchez, who lived along the lower Mississippi in the 600s and 1700s, continued building mound centers and maintaining hierarchical societies with sacred rulers known as great sons. Through them, fragments of the Mississippian world survived into recorded history. The arrival of Europeans in the 1500s and beyond marked the beginning of a new and devastating chapter. Diseases carried by explorers and traders swept across the continent long before settlers arrived in force. Entire communities fell to smallpox, measles, and influenza, leaving landscapes dotted with abandoned towns and silent mounds. To many European eyes, these earthworks seemed like relics of vanished peoples, not realizing that their builders still lived, remembered, and told stories of the sacred sites. Colonial expansion compounded the tragedy. Many mounds were plowed under for farmland or quarried for soil. Others were looted, their artifacts stolen and scattered into private collections. In the 1800s, a popular myth even claimed that the mounds had been built by a lost race unrelated to Native Americans. This false narrative was used to justify the displacement of indigenous peoples, erasing their connection to the monuments of their ancestors. It took generations of scholarship, archaeology, and native voices to restore the truth that the mounds are indigenous creations, rooted in living traditions. Despite centuries of neglect, some mounds still stand in remarkable condition. Monk's Mound at Cahokia remains an imposing presence, its massive steps leading to a summit that commands views of the Mississippi Valley. The Great Serpent Mound still curls across the Ohio landscape, its coils glowing under moonlight. Poverty Point's vast ridges are now recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, celebrated for their scale and significance. These surviving monuments remind us of both loss and resilience. Modern archaeology continues to peel back the layers of mystery. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed hidden structures beneath the soil, longhouses, ceremonial plazas, and smaller mounds yet to be excavated. Drone mapping allows researchers to see alignments invisible from the ground, showing how entire landscapes were shaped with intention and precision. Each new discovery reshapes our understanding, revealing complexity where once scholars saw only simplicity. Equally important are the voices of native peoples themselves. For the descendants of the mound builders, these sites are not merely archaeological remains but living places of connection. Ceremonies are still held at mounds, songs are sung, and offerings made. Oral traditions speak of ancestors who shaped the land, of sacred beings who dwell within the earth, and of histories too deep to be captured by science alone. Listening to these voices restores balance to the story, reminding us that the mounds belong not only to the past, but to the present. The Mississippi Mounds embody a paradox. They are monuments of permanence, massive and enduring, yet they also represent cultures that rose and fell, leaving behind more questions than answers. Were they primarily temples, tombs, or calendars? Did they symbolize authority, spirituality, or both? How did their builders understand their place in the cosmos? And what lessons can we draw from their triumphs and collapses? Each mound stands as a silent riddle, inviting us to look closer, to dig deeper, and to imagine worlds beyond our own. As the sun sets over the floodplains today, the mounds appear as gentle hills, easy to overlook by those who pass nearby. But to those who pause, they reveal the outline of a civilization that once thrived in harmony with the rhythms of the river and the sky. They remind us that history is not confined to distant continents or famous empires, but is written in the very soil beneath our feet. And they urge us to protect what remains, for in their earth lies not only the memory of a forgotten people but also the story of humanity itself.